Is Joe Ward on his way out of Derby County? That is a question which seems to be common among the Derby County fans, and even more so recently given the recent links to some League One sides as well as Championship opposition. Is it a situation where Joe Ward will look to be moving out of Derby County? These are all things which I'm going to cover in this video. Now, for me, Joe Ward came to Derby County with an absolute great deal of hype, and a player who Derby County fans were really excited to see put on the black and white of Derby County. And ultimately, he started the season in really good shape, in really good form, but picked up some big injuries early doors, which cost him a lot of time out of the first team, and ultimately meant that Derby County went out and picked up Ryan Nyambe. It also gave Jake Rooney the opportunity to step up into the first team. Of course, he then picked up that injury, and obviously it gave Kane Wilson an opportunity to build on his performances. And this is what has been a big situation for Derby County with Joe Ward over the course of the last 12 to 18 months. Now, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, turn on the notification bell, hit the like button, let me know where you think Joe Ward's going to go, if he is going to go in this January transfer window. Let me know your thoughts down below. Now, obviously, Joe Ward is a player who, in my opinion, doesn't really have a position for Derby County. Now, we've all seen how good he can be in those forward areas, and we've seen how disappointing he can be at times in the defensive areas as well. And there's not really a position for him in this Derby County side in the Championship. And ultimately, I think Derby County have made a bit of a meal out of Joe Ward, and I personally think he should have been given opportunities to play higher up the pitch rather than playing in that right back position, which he has done for most of the time he's played for us. We've seen when he's played in those forward areas, though, he has been absolutely electric. You go back to the Portsmouth game where he bagged a brace and looked really good when Derby County had some injuries, and you look at him in that right back position where he's never really fitted in because he just doesn't have that defensive ability. Now, playing in a back five, I think he's done really well at right wing back, and that's where he came into the team originally last season after his signing. And ultimately, I don't think it's been a bad transfer. I just think it's been an unlucky one for both Derby County and for Joe Ward. The injury he picked up was a very freak one where he ripped the fat pad off his heel, which is obviously a difficult injury to recover from because it's not really a common injury. Now, for Joe Ward, he's obviously going to have options for me because there is a player in there. And we already know, we've heard over the course of the last few days that the likes of Portsmouth and Oxford United are interested. Now, I believe he'd fit in perfectly with Gary Rowett at Oxford United. Obviously, Gary Rowett is set to become the manager there if everything goes through. I don't know if it's been confirmed as of yet. You'll have to let me know down in the comments. But as I'm recording this, I don't think it has. And I do also think that if Pompey play a back three, I think he could fit in there as well. But personally, I think there's more chance of him going to League One because you look at Derby County, if they send him off to an Oxford or a Portsmouth and he puts in really good performances, he could then end up being the reason why Derby County potentially end up getting relegated, or one of the reasons why another Championship club stays in the division, and that obviously makes it a really difficult decision for Derby County and for Joe Ward. Now, the best thing that we can do is give him the best possible opportunity to go and play football. Now, do I think that a loan move could be on the cards for Joe Ward? Ultimately, I don't think that would make much sense. I think if he's going to go, it has to be a permanent deal so that we can get some money off our wage bill, we can get some money in the transfer budget to ultimately bring in a selection of new players like the ones that I've mentioned in our most recent videos. Obviously, the likes of Jayden Montour, you look at Louis Barry, obviously there's Maxime Bernal and Derry Murky, and all players who I've spoke about over the course of the last few weeks who I believe could certainly improve Derby County, but to be able to bring those players in, we have to let players go. Now, for me, I personally think Joe Ward's going to end up at the top end of League One. I think he might end up at a Barnsley, maybe a Bolton, maybe a Peterborough. I think they're the opportunities that he might have. Now, don't get me wrong, I think if a Championship opportunity comes up, I don't necessarily think that Paul Warne will stand in his way and stop him making that move, but I do think that it will change the concept of the deal, where we might be a little bit helpful towards a Barnsley or a Bolton because they're not going to impact us this season, whereas if we're giving to a Pompey or an Oxford, we've got to play a little bit of hardball so that we don't strengthen a rival without being able to strengthen ourselves, and that's something which is going to be a big talking point. Now, obviously, Joe Ward has had his moments for Derby County. He's had some really good appearances. He's also had some really bad ones. And I think, realistically, the worst thing that happened for Joe Ward was that injury early doors. Because then, obviously, we pick up the Jake Rooney injury. We go and pick up Ryan Nyambe. And then Ryan Nyambe is absolutely outstanding. Has been an unbelievable player for Derby County since signing, but now he's picked up his injuries, which opens up that door for Joe Ward again. And I do think he put in a really good display. I think it was against Burnley, the game which he came back sort of out of the wilderness, and I think he put in a really good display that night. And I do think he has good performances in him. Now, would I let Joe Ward go? Now, the question for me would be is how are we going to replace Joe Ward? I think Joe Ward is an unbelievable talent. I think he can put on really good performances, as we've seen. But I think the big question is if we're going to lose him from the depth chart, who are we going to add into the depth chart? In what position? Now, I don't necessarily believe we need to bring in a right back to replace Joe Ward. I personally think we could bring in a midfielder, we could bring in a centre back. But I do think that whoever comes in after has to be a better player. It's like when you look at the players that left this summer, the likes of Waghorn, the likes of Louis Sibley, Max Bird, all these players who moved on, Conor Horahan, have we improved on them in replacing them? In my opinion, yes. Joe Wildsmith, another one. Did we improve on him? Yes, in my opinion. Now, this is where it gets difficult, because if you can't bring in a better player right now, then in my opinion we might as well keep him till the summer, and then potentially send him out on loan in the summer or transfer him in the summer. That would be my personal opinion on the Joe Ward situation, because for me, if you can't bring in a better player, you're making yourself weaker to strengthen an opposition, which if he went to Pompey or Oxford, it would be an opposition. Now, I also think that as Derby County as a club, whatever you're getting rid of Joe Ward for, wherever he's going, it doesn't really matter, so long as you get the value that you want. Now, how would we value Joe Ward? Is he £500,000, £1 million? Where do you value him? Because for me, as a player who's not really getting into the team, who hasn't really got in the team during League One either. Now, understandably, we had one of the best teams in League One last year, and in my opinion, I think we were the best team in the division. Individual errors cost us the title early on in the season. Other than that, best team in the league. And you look at Joe Ward, and you think he could strengthen he could strengthen all 24 teams in League One, really. Maybe not Birmingham. Maybe that's the only one that he probably wouldn't strengthen. He strengthens some teams below us in the Championship, and that is the big question for me, because it's a case of supply and demand, really. How many people want Joe Ward? There is obviously only one supply of Joe Ward. Who wants him? Can we get a bidding war going? Because if we can get ourselves £500,000 to £1 million for him, I think he's 28, maybe 29 years old, so he's got years left in the tank. Get some appearance bonuses in there. Get some future, if they make a transfer, get a fee in there as well. Because why not? Because we've got to make sure that we secure our own future and secure that we can make steps forward in the future if Joe Ward goes on to do well for somebody else. Now, obviously, it's a big talking point. A lot could happen. Later on today, we face Luton Town. It's going to be an interesting one. If you have not checked out the preview already, make sure you go ahead and do that. Check out the other videos on the channel as well. Hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, and I'll catch you in the next video.